still feel very lucky for what I get to do. I get to go be a part of people's journeys. You know, I was on one flight where we held the flight. There was a dad that was making a connecting we were the connecting flight, and his son was on life support and not going to make it. And it's stories like that where you're like, I mean, as a mom, I mean, it was my leg, so I got to, you know, fly. You alternate who flies which leg. A lot of people think the first officer is just the co-pilot. You don't fly.
I love that.
You,
Awesome distinction. Yeah.
So it was my leg to fly, and even just, you know, advancing the thrust levers and taking off, you're just thinking, this has to be the longest flight for this parent, you know, knowing that, you know, and so all you could think of is, I just want to, your heart goes out to them, even though you're in the front of the plane. And to think that was one story on the plane, you know, and you get to be a part of it, you know. And so I feel very privileged that I get to have this opportunity to be doing this, you know, because I feel like I can help make a difference. They might not know my name, or they might not even remember that flight, you know, but I feel like I got you there safely. And I treat every flight like my kids were on board, you know. So.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to another episode of Consciously Curious. We have Marissa Guilford, airline transport pilot, with us today, gracing us with her presence. She's in Chicago for a couple days, and we're about to deep dive into the world of aviation and being a pilot, being a single mom, all that good stuff. So, Marissa, welcome to the show. Thank you for sharing some time and experience with us.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Where I'd like to start is how long you've been in the game for.
Airline pilot. I'm new to the game. Older pilot, but new to the airline world.
Sure.
Airlines have been flying for about 2 years.
Okay.
Airline flying.
Yeah.
But licensed pilot for 17 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So for sport, for fun, for hobby, or what were you flying?
For fun. So when I first became a pilot, it's called a private pilot's license.
Okay.
And it's kind of like the weekend warrior, where you go out for the $100 hamburger, or
I love that.
Yeah, it's fun. Or you search for coffee. That's what we always called.
Really?
Yeah, I was just gonna, you spend, $100 to go find a cup of coffee, basically. Yeah, I know. It's good.
If I had the choice to choose if I had to pick between getting a boat or a plane, it'd be a plane for me.
Yeah, or you can get a seaplane, a little bit of both.
Seaplane. What is that with the seaplane?
Yeah, it has floats. Or you can get a seaplane with a hull.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. So if we can go back into a time machine.
Okay.
Who or what kind of led you into this path?
My dad had a really big influence on my path. My dad was a pilot, but I think I've always been enamored with the early 1900s. Early aviation, 10s, 20s. So in the 20s, Lindbergh was trying to, cross the Atlantic, and back in the flying boat era, the PBYs, the Catalinas. So there was definitely like the more romanticism of aviation, where it just seemed it was the Hollywood glamour. Yeah.
Yeah. And has it held up its weight now that you're doing it?
Yes and no. The airline world is not as glamorous as I think it once was, but when you get in something like a seaplane, like something that's more nostalgic, there's definitely it's like it's woven in the making of the plane almost, or something that's older, where it has that timeless, the classicness.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. What was training like?
Training
it might be a little different from when you did it these days, right?
Training through airline training.
Yeah, there's a lot of like certs and licenses, right? You got
there are. I've probably had 8 or 9 check rides with
and is that FAA. Someone just like precepting you, or what's a check ride?
It's the FAA, Federal Aviation Administration. And it's an examiner, and it can cost. It's a check ride that you pay for. Back in the day, it was $300 for a check ride. I think nowadays it's $800 to $1,000 for a check ride. So not only do you have to be proficient and trained, you have to come up with the money to take this expensive test.
Right.
So And a part of it is the
it's an actual flight too. It's
it
not
is.
a simulator,
It's a flight.
right? Okay.
Yeah. When you get to the airline world, you are getting typed in the aircraft in a full motion simulator.
Okay.
Before you actually fly the plane, which is a
Right.
little bit different, but.
Okay. And are there any potential sponsors for these?
Yes,
Okay.
sort of. There's lots of scholarships.
Okay, good.
I belong to a great organization called Women in Aviation,
Oh.
and it's kind of misleading a little bit because it's not just for women. It should be called everyone in aviation, because you can be a mechanic, you can be an aviation enthusiast, you can be an air traffic controller, dispatcher, be in flight management.
Yeah.
You're not just limited to being a pilot, but there's lots of scholarships. I'm actually a scholarship recipient, so.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Walk me through some experiences of school, like the difficulties, the frustrations, the joys, the highs and lows.
The highs and lows, I think, are with anything training. You're pushed beyond your mental and emotional limits often. And so you have to find, what is the fall down 7 times, get up 8?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you definitely have to keep getting up and moving forward.
Yeah.
And I think the longer you're in it, the easier it is to move forward and, stop thinking about the mistakes you made and just keep focusing on how to improve.
Okay.
But I had maybe a rough time in training, not because I lacked the capacity to learn. It was more of an emotional thing in the beginning. My dad was killed in a plane crash. So I actually, when I got my private pilot license on the 10-year anniversary of his plane crash.
Okay.
And then I went on to become a flight instructor, and just really going through that process, I think it was kind of very cathartic. It was more of a therapeutic thing to do. And then as time went on, it was a little more consuming to go through flight training, just in the way how I learn. Not everybody learns the same way.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are more linear in thought, and I have to see it, feel it, touch it, give it an example. Let me,
experience
everything.
Experience
the whole thing.
Right.
And so I'm more of a creative thinker. So I think if you're more artistic, I can't say that that's going to be the same for everybody, but at least it was for me.
Okay. What's the breakdown between in-class sim, and maybe do they take you out onto actual flights and stuff, or what's the breakdown?
Well, to go through your initial training as a private pilot, you do ground school, and then you also do a 2-hour flight, and then you might do another flight later on in the week. It depends on, a lot of people do it at their leisure. As far as airline training, it's really like a boot camp style, where it's Monday through Friday, intensive, ground school, learning about systems, and then you once you pass the systems and the knowledge portion, then you move on just to focus on the flight portion of it. So
that being the boot camp. That being said,
airline boot camp. That's what they should call it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is it scary though? How fast it is?
Yeah, I think this is the second airline I've been at as a pilot. So I think the initial going through the first time was a lot scarier because I didn't know what to expect. And it just seemed like a lot of weight. My kids depend on me. I can't fail. And I actually did fail my check ride, which was so disheartening.
Can you?
I was like, I did. Yeah, and a lot of people think that it's just the end all, but there's everybody's going to fail at some point.
Okay.
And if you haven't already, guess what? It's going to happen. There's going to be some sort of stage check where you're going to fail. And so, yeah, I failed, and then I went back and I passed. And even coming to this airline, I passed everything, first time around. So I didn't need any additional training or that. And there's nothing wrong with getting that.
Okay.
But
are there a certain number of fails you can do before you get kicked out? Or
I'm guessing.
Does it depend on the company? Or?
I would guess you can't fail it twice. I'm just going to throw that out
You didn't have
there.
to beg to like
no.
get a second chance.
No,
though.
you
Okay.
you have to be able to show that you're competent.
Okay.
You know, so it was definitely sometimes it's just it depends on the circumstances, and I think that was really what they saw. You know, with mine.
And
so
these flights are like with passengers on
oh
board,
no,
or they're
so you
not.
have to no.
Okay.
No. But I'm sure passengers would love to appreciate the very first time you do fly the jet. You have passengers on board.
Gotta learn somehow.
You do. Like, so it was slightly humorous at this airline. So I had already flown at another airline. So my first flight, you know, first landing to get up and go tell everybody, well, thank you. It was my first landing. And so nobody believes you. But in reality,
yeah, it's like,
was.
oh, good joke.
They're like, oh, she's funny. And I'm like, no, really, you guys, that was my first landing. How was it? And they're like, oh, it was great.
Oh, man. That's awesome.
I know, right? It's fun.
That's awesome.
You got to have fun with what you do, though, right?
Right.
So,
I've throughout the like Reddit threads, like that's what they've said is like it's like you have to have fun with it. You have to be lighthearted about it.
yeah. I mean, it's a very serious. There's a lot of responsibility, but
Right.
at the same time, it's. I think that could also be a safety issue too. If you just solely focus on being by the book, you know, there's a human aspect to it where, you know, if it was all technology, then you don't need
Robots
a pilot.
would be.
Yeah, I'm
Right.
like, you don't need a pilot.
AI.
But obviously, you do need a pilot, and it's because we can do things and see things that technology cannot. So,
So with that boot camp, what if someone was trying to make a career pivot? How could they maintain a full-time job through this boot camp?
oh, with that was more like at the airline level. There are some.
So like you get paid to go be through boot camp, or
No, well, when you're hired to fly for an airline, you already have your commercial pilot's license. So all the flight training up
okay.
until then, you can still
find
do it
find
boost.
ways to get paid.
Yeah, you can get scholarships, and you can go through. I went through a Zero to Hero program, so I went in as a private pilot, and 3 months later, I was a commercial flight instructor, single and multi-engine. So
Okay.
yeah, and that was boot camp. So sorry, not to like totally confuse, but
No.
you can expedite anything. You know, if you treat it like a full-time job. Yeah, you can do it in a very short duration.
Yeah, I'm just like, what if you needed an income during, and what if you didn't get the scholarship? You know, like how
There's
difficult
ways
would
to
that
finance.
Oh,
I think
okay.
that down the line there is a pilot shortage.
Yeah.
And I've always thought and believed that the airlines are going to come up with a creative way to be able to pay for people's ratings. But other carriers in other countries can do that, but we have legal issues trying to do that, you know, to make sure that the person, you know, that goes through something like that actually works for the company, because that's a phenomenal amount of money to be able to put somebody through that. I know that I think that like JetBlue has a program like that.
Yeah.
I want to say that there's gateway programs where you can go like internally too.
Okay.
So sometimes it's becoming hired already at an airline. So
Okay. But I mean, by then, you know, these are private pilots, and they know that they've kind of do have an interest in flying somewhat. You know?
Yeah.
So it is a big investment, but okay. Well, what about someone who is completely new to the field, have no flying experience? Like, is there a way to like shadow or gather some flight experience before diving deep into it?
Yeah, actually, so there's a program by the EAA. Sounds weird. It's the Experimental Aircraft Association, but it's not sketchy. Okay. It's not experimental. But there is a program called the Young Eagles, and that's an initiative to fly kids up through the ages of 17 for a free flight. So basically, you can. I think it's go to eaa.org.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there's a link on there for Young Eagles.
Yeah.
And they're all throughout the U.S. And there's events, and they can go and sign up and get a free ride.
Wow. Like sit up front?
Yeah, you're flying. Yeah. And, well, it's a small single-engine airplane.
Oh, okay.
But as far as getting up front on an airline...
Well, that's what I'm saying. What if we're not lucky enough to realize that, or have people, like, push us into that at that young age, right? So, like... me, like if someone our age are trying to make a career pivot and they wanted to see that from that perspective, like what it was like, and if they were to have any interest in it.
There's aviation outreaches through like Women in Aviation. They have usually aviation days where the community can come out and get some hands-on activity with aircraft and different avenues that they can kind of get involved in. But as far as like getting into a simulator, there would be more of a security issue, just with all the incidents with 9/11. So I think that there would probably some sort. I know.
No, you're right. No, you're absolutely.
So
right.
there would be legal issues to be able to jump through. So before you go and start your flight training, there's they do run you through a system just to make sure that there's not any you're not already on the grid for being a bad guy.
For sure,
so to say.
Yeah.
So.
No felonies or anything.
Yeah.
Like that. Do you need any like formal education to fly?
Like a degree?
Yeah.
So no, you don't. I don't have a degree.
So this is a trade then, right?
Yes,
I have
a
more
trade.
Tradesmen.
Yes, we do. And the airlines back in the day, you absolutely had to have a degree.
Oh.
And some airlines, major airlines, still require it. Most regionals do not. And I don't think having one necessarily makes anybody a better pilot. It just shows that you can study. Sorry.
You're absolutely right.
Sorry. I tell my kids that too. So yeah, well, a degree just shows you that you can study and pass tests. Right. So.
And if you want to be something that needs a degree, go after it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So.
Okay. And you mentioned a couple things, and for those that don't know, can you explain what the difference between regional and maybe major, and is there such a thing as legacy as well? Like, what are the differences?
Yeah, so the legacy carriers are like, so hang on, let me back up.
Sure,
so regional airlines are like the baby jets. So
Okay.
they're like the little cute ones, the little puddle jumpers that back in the day used to be like turboprops, and people were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe we're going to go fly on that. And
those are
now,
the most fun.
I know, right? Thank you. We need more turboprops. And yeah, they really are. Then they graduated into baby jets is what I would call it. They're like 50 passenger jets. And a lot of people complain because you can't bring your carry-on all of them. But you know what? You get to go from point A to point B and fly in the air magically like a bird.
Is this like Spirit or Frontier? Or...
No, those are larger. So those are actually major
okay.
airline carriers.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So it's like what you would see like United Express, American Eagle. The airplane that I fly is a regional, so it's says American Eagle on the side.
Okay, I've never noticed actually.
Yeah. So if you go and bought an American Airlines ticket, you
Yeah.
would have no idea that you might be flying a portion of that on a regional airline carrier.
Okay.
It's all done under the American name.
Okay.
And then a major airline is somewhere that travels, the capacity of the aircraft, you could travel from point A to point B a lot farther, so the range of it, you can travel, coast to coast, or that's like your 737s. Well, some regionals even have, like Hawaiian Airlines still has the 717. So
Okay.
it's still like a larger jet, 80 passengers, but it's
Where you like walk out on the
or a little bit more. Yeah, right.
back or...
Yeah.
I loved Mokulele.
Right? Well,
I wouldn't have paid $100 to go whale watching if I knew I was going to be riding on Mokulele and like flying. We flew pretty low to the water and saw some whales that way. It's like
always the legal minimum, at least. I'm not Mokulele, but I'm sure the pilots were.
Oh yeah.
To all my Mokulele peeps, I'm sure you were still safe above the ground.
Right. Not trying to give a show or anything.
No, they were actually. It's part 121.
Okay.
But it's no. I know it might be a bad joke. They're like, great, Marissa. Thanks for throwing us under the bus. No. Yeah, we're professional, and no, it's no, they are. It's I used to live in Hawaii, so I feel like I can say that. I'm like, no, I can totally say that. But yeah, no, it's major airline carriers, American, United, Delta, and the legacy carriers are the ones that have been around, longer. United, American, Delta. Am I missing somebody else?
Is there maybe Alaskan or?
I don't know if Alaska's a legacy. I'm sorry, Alaska.
I don't know. Yeah.
And I don't know if Hawaiian is. I feel like Hawaiian should be, just because I used to work for them as a dispatcher, and I loved their their first flight was in 1929, Inter-Island Airways seaplane.
Hawaiian?
Yes,
That's
it was
amazing.
amazing. Well, it's called Inter-Island Airways back then, so I feel like the history should make it a legacy. I'm sure that's not the case, but
Wow.
I'm not sure if that answered the question about legacy carriers. I think it's
Not
just the
really.
people that have been around. I know.
Like the.
It's all magic.
Are there like certain amenities on a legacy? I'm just like trying to. Where does the word like? Why is it labeled legacy? Like, are there like free Wi-Fi or more?
No,
Like,
I think it's
what's
just the ones that have been around
quality?
longer.
Okay. Oh,
yeah,
okay.
that's it.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. How long were you a dispatcher for?
I have 6 years
Okay.
dispatching, not at the same airline. So I've worked at. I'm a Jane of all trades,
That's
master
awesome.
of none. Trade. I'm like, okay. I've worked at a lot of different airlines and worked in flight operations, which is super cool. And but yeah, it's great. And actually, as a dispatcher, you can ride up in the cockpit, so you're a part of the crew, even though you don't fly on the plane.
Okay.
So if an aircraft is going from, let's say, Chicago to New York, you'll have the captain and the dispatcher look over the whole flight plan and make sure everything's okay, the weather's
Wow.
okay. So the dispatcher's on the ground monitoring the whole plane, from the air. And if something happens, the dispatcher would then, the captain would then call dispatch, or the crew would call dispatch and just say, hey, we have a medical emergency. Maybe they have to return back to the field.
Oh yeah.
Maybe they lost an engine.
Yeah.
Maybe they had bad weather come in. They had to hold, and now they have to divert to another field.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's always communication.
Yeah.
So I was a dispatcher, but you also get what's called CAS, which is a privilege. It can be revoked, but it's cockpit authority. I think it's security screening.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, it gives you permission. You go through a really intensive background check to make sure that you can,
Is this walking through security? Is that what that's CAS?
That's I have a little barcode.
Yeah.
That for known crew member,
Okay.
and well, that's known crew member. So that I think. Yeah, flight attendants still have known crew member, but they're not in CAS. So it's a different. It's a different
Okay.
check in the box. you know.
And through your 6 years, how was the work-life balance of that?
Oh, that was kind of pretty good,
Okay.
actually. And, 4 days, it's 10-hour shifts.
Okay.
So, and they could be chaotic sometimes if it's really junky weather, summertime thunderstorms or snowstorms. And obviously those snowstorms were not in Hawaii when I was there. But it was more so on the mainland. But because you are dealing with multiple flights.
Right.
And so when one flight goes wrong and they're all traveling to the
Pushes,
same,
yeah,
it's
back,
everything.
yeah.
Everything's affected. And but it was a great job. And
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I mean, because I couldn't, even though I work in an office, I couldn't see myself in a cubicle or anything like that.
Yeah.
And you're kind of conversing with people. You probably
Yeah.
recognize people's voices over and over
do.
again.
Well, whenever I go visit the folks in the tower, by the way, I love Chicago
Aw.
Tower. Thank you.
Aw.
Chicago O'Hare. I want to say that.
Which one, O'Hare?
O'Hare,
Okay.
yeah. So I'm based out of Chicago. So one of my friends, she's up there. And
Mm-hmm.
so when I get bored, I'll ask to go up. And it's funny because when they start talking, I try not to look at them so I can not that I don't want to see them.
But you
Way
want
to
to
go, Marissa.
recognize some voices, yeah?
I know, right? I'm like, wait, I've heard you before. I think you might have yelled at me before. No, they didn't yell at me. They love me. But they're like, you're the troublesome one. I'm like, no, I'm not. But yeah, no, they're a good group of people, and they do a lot. They do a lot of really good work.
Mm-hmm.
So all air traffic controllers do. So that's another good job to get into too.
And you left just because you had an interest in flying.
I became a pilot before I was a dispatcher.
okay.
And I stayed in dispatch. There was a divorce in there, and so I thought it was I was kind of humble over that one. There was a divorce in there, and I thought it was the wiser choice to stay in dispatch because I was home every night.
Yeah.
At some point, a lot of those were second shifts, so I wouldn't necessarily tuck my kids into bed. but I was home every day. And from that mentality, I thought that was the right thing to do. So I stayed in there, and then I got to a major airline carrier and making really good money and working third shift overnight and trying to sleep during the day. And I was like, I cannot see living my life like this. And there was not enough money that would have made that okay. So at that point, I was like at a crossroads that I didn't realize I was going to be at, and I was like, I never thought I was going to be an airline pilot. I thought it was something I wanted to avoid, like the plague. Like
wow,
I thought,
what was the turnoff?
Right? I always thought that pilots, they start flying and they love flying, and there's this freedom and there's this romantic story involved in going on a journey and going towards the horizon, and and
you're above the clouds.
You are. You're flying, and it's so amazing. And then you get caught in this training, like this cycle, and
a lot of administrative stuff.
Yeah, and then people just stop flying, and they just fly jets, and it's a different type of flying. I'm not saying that flying a jet is not flying, but it's not like flying a little tail wheel, a little Piper Cub, and having the wind blow in your hair. And there's something really magical about that, and playful, and it's innocent. And that flying a jet is definitely you do have a lot of responsibility. You have a lot of responsibility even if you were in a little single engine airplane. But it's just a different thing. And I kind of related it to like a horse running a racetrack, and I always thought I was one of those spooked horses that didn't want to go in that thing, right? I was like, don't put me in the box. Don't get me, right? Exactly. And I was like, I don't want to run around in circles. That I can't see that. I can't see doing that to flying.
Love that analogy.
And then, thank you. I can market that to you. No, I'm kidding. You're like, you're such a... No, I'm kidding. But right? It felt like you like twist and contort something that you love into something that's just this thing.
Yes.
And it's not this. And before it was more of an emotion. It was something that you loved, and now it's just this serves a purpose. Where it's running around, and so. Yeah, I left the company as a dispatcher and decided to go back to flying.
Wow.
And that was a big unknown. Everybody was like, what the hell are you doing? Like, single moms don't just leave that type of money to go do that. And you're like, I can't teach my kids to go after their dreams and to go after what makes them feel alive if I'm not
doing it yourself.
Yeah, if I'm always burning the candle at both ends, if I'm always coming home tired, and you also become a parent you don't want to be. When you're tired, you're just like fatigued, and suddenly you're barking at your kids, and you're like, this is not, this is totally not my life. So yeah, there's that. So.
Damn. Okay. Wait, but so what part of flying led you to that decision? The idea of flying, because everyone was shocked, right? So what made you that pivot?
The pivot came from flying a little Piper Cub, actually, and I did not have my tail wheel endorsement, so I wanted to go get that, and I was determined that I was going to get that off of a grass strip. And I used to fly barefoot a lot in Hawaii, and I was just like, I am going to fly barefoot.
That's the
off
name.
This. Yeah,
that's so cool.
Well,
the IG name.
So it's there's I went there, and my kids were watching on the ground, and I was always told in my marriage that flying was the most selfish thing to do, and so it was kind of like this manipulative. Let me put you down for being once very independent, you know? And so I kind of really shut off anything flying when I was married. And so I kind of carried with that theme through the divorce, thinking this is selfish. And then kind of started to make good money over at the company. And I'm like, I'm going to go and I'm going to go get recurrent and I'm going to go fly. And so I went up to this little airfield in Ohio, Red Stewart Airfield, and this little 65 horsepower, no electric starter, no radio. So you have to go hand prop it, like full on back in the day. Right. And you just, and as soon as that prop caught, and it just started to, fire the engine. Yeah. I had tears. It was just like the exhaust comes back and you're like, oh my God, I'm so excited. I'm like, I need to be here. And then went flying, and it was super cool too to not have radios. A lot of people think that's so crazy. How did you fly without radios? I looked out the window, Susan. I looked out the window. I looked out the window, seeing a void. So anyways.
Is that legal now, or it just depends on the area?
Okay. The airspace, what's regulated. So I can't go into Chicago without a radio unless I approved it. I know, right? I shouldn't say you can't. In an emergency situation too, if a jet loses its comms. But so yeah, when I landed, shut off the engine. The coolest thing was having my kids run out full speed, and they're like, "Mommy," and they were so excited, and I was just like, this is not selfish, damn it. I'm like, this is
They're loving it.
Yeah. And I was like, why didn't I do this sooner? And so it was just so, again, healing, and it probably happened at exactly when it was supposed to.
Right.
And just waiting for me to get there, right? And I lasted probably 2 more weeks before I put in my notice.
Yeah.
I was like,
Good for you.
I was like, I can't do this.
Oh my goodness. That's amazing. And by then you had your was it 15 hours back then? 1,500 hours back then?
Yeah, before I stopped flying, I already had 1,500 hours.
Okay, so for someone else, for anyone else, what are some common pathways to obtain these 15 hours of flight time, right, that you need prior to?
Yeah, 1,500 to be a regional airline pilot.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of, if you have like an aviation degree, they can lower that to lower,
which is a whole other
conversation. Again,
since when does a degree
I know. Like, okay. But anyway, so there's these other standards that you can, and also if you are like a helicopter pilot, you can have lower time. There's I don't know the formula, but there's like some math behind it where it's like it counts for credit.
Transferable is that? How similar is it?
Nothing at all.
Okay.
Helicopters are not. They go up in the air and they land, but they are so on every axis. They're doing things
differently.
And, we have rudder pedals. They have just pedals, and it's the opposite. And it's just, it's different.
Okay.
So I have lots of friends that do both.
Okay.
So I'd actually love to get my helicopter rating, and I've been up, and it's costs a lot of money though.
Yeah. So
I'm just applying for scholarships. So that's what you do. Or unless somebody wants to sponsor me.
Right. No, yeah.
Throw that out there.
It can totally happen. So what about, we talked about a little like flight instruction.
Yeah.
So how does, that's one pathway.
Yeah.
What are some other pathways? And maybe elaborate on like what flight instruction is.
Flight instructing is just teaching somebody how to fly.
Oh.
So it could be from private pilot in a single engine to multi-engine, or instrument rating, which is flying in the clouds.
Okay.
So bad weather. And
why do they call that instrument rating?
Yeah, because you're flying off the instruments.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay. All right.
So I always like to joke around that when you're a VFR pilot, a visual flight rules pilot, so a private pilot, you can't fly in the clouds. And when you learn how to fly, they'll teach you about how many errors the instruments have, and to trust, flying, looking outside, right?
Yeah,
and then when you get your instrument rating, they're like, hey, guess what we just told you about those instruments?
Yeah.
We want you to trust those.
That's
and you're like, really?
That's really interesting.
Really? So, and there's a lot of really weird visuals that are, there's visuals, but there's also, your body will have weird sensations when you're in the clouds. You'll feel like you're actually turning when you're actually straight and level.
Wow.
So there's a lot of training that's involved simply with just being able to scan your instruments.
Yeah.
So sorry, that's not my work.
Okay.
Like,
Awesome.
I'm on reserve.
Yeah.
Which means I might need to go fly.
Yeah.
But Yeah, so there's all different avenues. I used to fly skydivers, so that's another way to do it. Flying cargo.
Did you actually skydive?
I did. I have about 300 skydives. I know, right? Back in the day.
Wait, you've done it 300 times?
Yeah. I
That's
was like
amazing.
19 and 20.
That's amazing.
It's a lot of fun. A lot of people are under the delusion that you'll lose your stomach, and you don't. It's like driving a motorcycle or something, like or putting your hand out the car window down the freeway. You always have that relative wind. There's the force.
Okay.
So you exit the plane going about 90, so you feel a lot of force.
Okay.
And then you just pick up to terminal velocity.
Oh,
so
wow. That's
fun.
amazing.
It's fun.
And then, so I cut you off. So you said skydive, pilot as well, and then what else?
You could fly like scenic tours you can still do.
Wow.
Because you need your commercial pilot's license. You can also continue to get your time if you have your own plane or just renting a plane.
So is this you documenting it, or who is this? Like they trust you when you document it? How does that work?
They do trust you. So and
but you'd want to know for yourself, right?
Yeah. So there's you have a logbook.
Okay.
And then so you log. It's just like if you were to log all the time you drive.
Yeah.
You know, but it's so you log all the time you fly in the sky, and
because you'll know real quick if you lied on those.
Oh yeah, you will. And if it's a real small world in aviation too.
Okay.
I know people joke around about the 6 degrees of separation. Flying.
It's true.
Flying is like 1 or 2 degrees of separation. Usually it's like, do you know so and so? And they're like, yeah. How do you know them? And you're like, it's small. You know, the ongoing
and
joke is
with
like
social media these days.
Oh yeah, now everybody knows everybody. Yeah, you're not going to be able to get away with that one at all. So, but yeah, it's a good network. It's a small tight knit community.
Okay.
So
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And did you have aspirations of going to jump into a major eventually?
Yeah.
And I think you said you don't have to interview anymore. You can just like transition to American if that's what you eventually want to.
Yeah. So I fly for Envoy, a regional airline, and we have a flow, which means that we automatically flow to American Airlines when
After
your number's called.
Okay. So
it's
a lottery ticket or
kind of, but it's
or seniority.
Seniority.
Okay.
Yeah. So as people retire and there's positions that open, then you just automatically go. So I kind of describe it like minor league baseball and then the majors.
Yeah.
So like the minor league baseball team is owned by the majors, and then you just go up, except the only difference is baseball you can also get put back down in the minors.
Ooh, yeah.
That doesn't happen there.
Oh.
Which would probably be kind of cool if it did.
Okay.
Kind of like if you were a good pilot, right? We'll draft you.
Merit based. Yeah.
Yeah, you need to work on your landings. We'll put you back. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. They wouldn't do that. Yeah. But it's there's a lot of opportunity. Okay. It's a great time in aviation to get involved. So it's
Yeah, you mentioned a shortage earlier.
There is a pilot shortage
because of like lower pay or like not as compensated or not.
Yeah, for years of not being compensated.
Yeah.
Like so more at the regional airline pilot level. So a lot of people, unless you are a single, no kids, no dependents, living in your parents' basement, it makes it really hard to work at a regional. So you have to be really frugal. So lucky for me, I've been frugal as a single mom. I can do that really well. And but no, it is still very difficult.
Yeah.
So that's why a lot of people, if they were to Google what the starting pay is, you'll see these large signing bonuses that are really used to kind of supplement that first year pay. But there's nothing that's been changed really in contracts.
Do you look at it as this is what I got to do to pay my dues?
Yeah. I mean, there's it's an avenue that you have to do. You have to go through it in order to get to the other side. I think I would. I think I'm a really good airline pilot. I think I'd make a good major airline pilot. I don't think I'd necessarily started off with that goal in mind.
Okay.
Like right, suddenly I'm totally not marketable anymore. No, I'm kidding. Whoa. No, I love flying.
But so for you're talking about just do it for the love.
Yeah, do it for the love.
Right,
If you stop loving it, you need to get out of the seat. Like somebody else should be there. I get very, still feel very lucky for what I get to do. I get to go be a part of people's journeys. You know, I was on one flight where we held the flight. There was a dad that was making a connecting we were the connecting flight, and his son was on life support and not going to make it. And it's stories like that where you're like, I mean, as a mom, I mean, it was my leg, so I got to, you know, fly. You alternate who flies which leg. A lot of people think the first officer is just the co-pilot. You don't fly,
I
but
love that.
you,
Awesome distinction. Yeah.
So it was my leg to fly, and even just, you know, advancing the thrust levers and taking off, you're just thinking, this has to be the longest flight for this parent, you know, knowing that, you know, and so all you can think of is, I just want to, your heart goes out to them, even though you're in the front of the plane, and to think that that was one story on the plane, you know, and you get to be a part of it, you know, and so I feel very privileged that I get to have this opportunity to be doing this, you know, because I feel like I can help make a difference. They might not know my name, or they might not even remember that flight, you know, but I feel like I got you there safely. And I treat every flight like my kids were on board, you know. Good, so but yeah, there's a lot of, I think in that aspect I would make a good major airline pilot. Yeah. You know, there's also other things in flying that I'd like to accomplish though too. So okay. Yeah.
You agree with me or not when I say this, but people that work like maybe flight attendant as well as pilots as well as passengers might forget that they're up in the air.
Yeah.
Right? And they're just thinking about, I got to get to my destination. I got to make it through security. And they forget how lucky we are to just simply fly.
Yeah. I don't know when it necessarily happened, but I remember one of the earliest flight that I could remember, I think I was like 7 or 8, and I'm from Southern California. We were going to Minnesota, and I remember lucking out and getting the window. I have siblings. At the time, I only had 3 siblings, but still the fight over who got the window, right? And that was a big thing. And my head was pressed up against the window almost the whole entire time. And I mean, these were back in the days when you could ask like flight attendants for playing cards, and you'd get those. Nice. And like they'd serve meals.
I don't remember those.
So it was like way, way, way different. And but I remember staring out the window. I was probably looking for Care Bears because they live in the. Did you know what Care Bears are?
Yeah, the colorful bears with the rainbows.
They live in the clouds, and I was so determined. I'm like, where are they? I'm like, but I remember just staring outside the window the whole time. And it's interesting now because we go into planes, and usually everybody just closes the window.
I know.
And I'm like,
I just shake. I'm like, why? You lose that sense of wonder. I know,
but I'm like, when did we forget that? Like, people used to gather around in fields to watch somebody take to the air because it was this huge feat. And they're like, oh my gosh, this person is flying. Yeah. And now we're like, close this down. And I'm like,
yeah, I love grabbing a burger at In-N-Out by LAX and just like watching them land and take off. Yeah.
Yeah, that's like a go-to as soon as I land there. I'm like,
oh yeah, I know.
In-N-Out.
So for those that are maybe, it matters more for those that actually fly for a living, the burnout.
Yeah.
What can they do to reinvigorate that passion or sense of fulfillment?
Go fly something small.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
I think go take a kid to the airport or something. I think that there's something, I don't know, like, I think as adults, we probably need the homework assignment to go follow a kid around, like, at least once a week, and, like, legitimately, like, see the world through the wonder of their eyes, because it's magical, you know? And I think at some point you lose that in, like, I don't know,
You
people,
do. 'Cause you get
people
caught
only
up
say
in
we have to
the
adult.
rat race and you get caught. Yeah.
I know, I'm like, no, you should laugh. That should be your number one thing is like, hey, this is amazing. And, I mean, as totally not fun as being on reserve is, at the same time, I'm going to scream like crazy when they're like, I have a flight for you. And I'm going to be like, woo, I get to go flying. I'm sure I'm going to start all the passengers. They're going to be like, oh my God, there is an excited pilot right over here. I'm like, you guys, I get to go fly.
Right.
But it's like, you just wait standby to get put into the game, you know? And maybe passengers need a little bit of that. I don't know, maybe passengers after every maybe like a couple flights, maybe they have to fly standby.
Ooh.
So then they know that they're so incredibly lucky to get a seat, you know? And I don't know. I think I don't know. We've lost track of a lot of that.
Wow.
So there's a lot of people that forget how incredibly lucky we are to fly.
And you know, I don't fly on too regularly, like maybe like once a year, a couple times a year. And in my experience, I haven't come across a pilot that is out like as willing to share their like enthusiasm. They're just like they show up, you know, and then they do the thing. I don't know. It's like how like interactive are you with like the passengers?
I do like to you know hang out, you know, just to kind of see who's on board too, or you know, especially when you land too, just to you know stand and you know at the doorway and just you know wish them well. But you know, I wish that there was more involvement. I always thought that the airlines, we're short pilots, right? And we're not, I shouldn't say marketing, but I guess that's the term I'll use. It's we're not marketing, we're not sharing to the passengers.
Yeah.
Like, why aren't we giving them fun material about flying or the wonder of flying? And even if it's electronic now, because the costs of printing, or, you know, I'm sure there's always some excuse, but I'm like, okay, so make it electronic then. But the thing is that you could be teaching somebody about flying and about your airline for free every single time. And then I think if you can, I know there's some sort of quote out there. I love quotes. I leave quotes actually on the plane when I leave for the next crew.
Oh, like in the cockpit?
The yoke.
That's amazing.
So you're like, who is
this? Who is this?
I know, right?
Try to track you down or something.
Right. And I'm like, I just, in my mind, I feel like it's just like this big poof of glitter, right? With minus the glitter, right? And like, I feel like they'd get mad if I did the glitter part. But yeah, there's like a quote, like if you, I don't know if it was like Benjamin Franklin or something like that. And it's something about if you can change somebody's heart, then that's where the learning's taken place. If you can move them, you know, and I think that that's where we've lost people, you know, we're too like focused on the training, check. Well, what moves you though, you know, and I don't know. Anyways.
Yeah. Wow. How small is the airline community? Like how often are you flying with the same people?
It depends on what they tend to bid. It's called, you know, bidding. So if they want to work the weekends, then you might get more trips with the same people who prefer to work over the weekend, or work during the weekdays. And, I've flown with the same captains before, mainly more at the previous airline. I'm pretty new where I'm at right now. But
maybe as like you get more seniority and you're surrounded with other people with more seniority.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I've flown with the same captain over I've flown with the same captain a couple times over at my previous employer.
I'm sure you have a dream team squad or
right? Where it just flows and you're just like, yes.
Don't even have to say anything. It's just like, yep, you got that, I got this.
Yeah. Or it's just there's such a good cadence too. Yeah. So if you're like running behind and someone's like, hey, why don't you set everything up in the cockpit and I'm going to go do the walk around, because you got to walk around the plane after, make sure there's no, you know, damage. You didn't have a, bird strike or something. And so it just helps expedite and get back on schedule. So the rolling delays, you know, we're actually are trying to help passengers, you know, like, so you try to do the turn quicker.
And see, they don't even know that sometimes, you know?
No, and sometimes you're going to like an outstation. So you're bringing the airplane in, which was delayed, and you were going to have an hour on the ground. And so in your mind, you're thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to go get something to eat. I can at least go out and use that bathroom and not the airplane lab. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but I'm like, hey, I can go.
Space is nice,
I know. But like, and then suddenly you're delayed for whatever reason,
right,
mechanical, or the plane came in late, weather, and all of a sudden you're on a quick turn.
Oh, man.
Guess what? Your butt's staying right there on the plane, you know, and you're suddenly not going to eat now. And sometimes it works out good where somebody else will say, hey, I'm going to go run inside, go grab us a bite to eat. You start setting up over here.
Okay.
And it's this group effort, you know, and so it goes more into having that good crew environment. Doesn't just go into just solely flying the plane. It's more of like, you know, common decency, like how can we work together better.
Most of it's not even flying. It's just, right.
So it's how do we look out for each other?
Wow. Yeah. What about some negatives? What about like flying with people that are burnt out, or, you know, like how do we do that? Because you can't not talk to that person. It's like,
here's a plug. I have Bose headsets that I wear, and I can listen to music.
You can?
Actually, it cuts out when the ATC makes transmissions. So
Okay.
it is, you know. But when it gets really awkward, you know, there's some people that just, I feel like I'm pretty good at
you are
conversing. Yeah. And so I'm like, hey, what got you into flying? And they're like, and they just say it, and that's it. They're like, oh, you know, and then that it's not like they hit the ball back, you know, like a conversation back, and it just like stops, and so you just keep serving, and you're like, okay. I'm like, okay, this is gonna be long, you know. Or you might run into people that really want to assert that they're smarter than you are, and so. I know, and that's a really interesting dynamic, because you kind of end up playing into the ego, because you're like, ooh,
well, at least they're conversing.
Can you please talk to me about this? Because I'd like to learn how to do that better, you know. And so then they start talking about themselves and how smart they are.
Something to learn, I guess.
I know. I'm like, okay, but at least they're positive. Or sometimes you try to steer the conversation from, you don't talk about a couple things in the cockpit, typically like religion and politics and kind
of like dating.
But some people just like to talk about that stuff anyways. And I was like, oh Lord. And I'm like, so you just try to steer passively how to, you know, I haven't really run into a captain where I've really, you know, bumped heads with. If there was an issue, is something that was more like discussed with like the chief pilot, and saying, hey, this person's really out of line. And I kind of just would let it go, you know, just to kind of,
you don't want to stir the pot.
You don't want to stir the pot, but it's also kind of like, I don't want to risk the dynamic of the CRM of what is actually there. Like,
and CRM is
crew resource management.
Okay.
So it's kind of like, God, it sounds so more in depth, but it's like the issues that we would have had to have gone to counseling. Like, you know what I mean? I'm like, oh, but it's just seeing different perspectives, you know? And so somebody, and that's what it is. It's kind of like, I tell my kids what perspective is I'll get like a coin, and I'll say, hey, what is this? And they're like, this is a quarter. And I'm like, well, what do you see right here? And they're like, heads. And I'm like, I see tails. And I'm like, start screaming at me. And they start screaming like, I see heads. And I'm like, I see tails. And I was like, tell me who's wrong. And they're like, neither one of us is wrong. And I'm like, okay, well, that's called perspective. Did it do any good to yell? And they were like, no. And I'm like, well, what should you do? And I'm like, can you walk over here and see my perspective? And I'm like, yeah, okay, well then, but you ran into the dynamic of like, Mr. Grumpy Pants captain that like just doesn't want to walk over and see your side, and you're like, okay, this isn't a conversation. This is like
it's a dead end.
It's a dead end. Yeah. And we don't see alike, or it's not going to be solved in a conversation in the sky. You know, it's not.
At the end of the day, you have a job to do, and so you'll do the job. You know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. You resort back to this is my job. Exactly. This is my job. This is my job, and I'm just going to do what I'm supposed to. So thank you. But so it can get interesting.
Okay. Let's talk about single mom life.
Yeah.
Yeah. How's that? And we know that you're following your dreams and they're super happy for you. But how is it to be going back and forth and not being, present? Not that you're not, like, you can find other ways to be present, but I'm sure you would rather be at home.
Yeah, there's a lot of pros and cons. Like when I actually sat down and did the math side, as far as like how often am I away from my kids, I'm actually get to spend more time at home being an airline pilot.
Okay.
A lot of people think I'm not at home with them as long. But if I had a 9 to 5, I would have to drop them off at either daycare or whatever, and then they'd have to be at after school daycare, and then I'd come home, probably not get home till 6. I'd probably have a good 2 hours with them before they go to bed. Yeah. Or I can be away, which again has its pros and cons. That sounds bad to say it has its pros. For mom to be away, mom's just going to be away. I'm like, well, okay.
Yes.
Right? Get a vacation every week. Yeah, I do actually. And it's, that helps add to the perspective, because a lot of people are like, oh, this is really irregular ops when you get to work sometimes. And I'm like, oh no, this is way easier than, I'm like, trust me. Yeah, when I'm away, there's FaceTime. They do have a phone. I know it sounds terrible to say that my kids would have an iPhone, but we text. I try to make myself available to them. Whenever, if they know I'm flying, they'll leave like a video, or I'll leave a video, or drop things in the mail. And sometimes they get there at the same time that I'm home. But it's still little things like that make a big difference. And as far as like being involved with like school, everything is online. Everything. They'll send you text messages for everything. If your kid's tardy, you're going to get a text message.
Okay.
Oh yeah. It's just like, so it's actually really difficult to not be engaged. Like when people are like, oh, I travel for work. And I'm like, no. I can have parent teacher conferences and I'm 2 states away, and there's not an issue. So I think it's just a matter of being creative and adaptive. Right. So, and another pro with actually being a single mom is that I don't get my kids all the time on holidays. Yeah. And I've always worked in the airlines, so we've just learned to celebrate off the holidays. So it doesn't really make a difference.
What's a holiday?
It's just a day. I'm like, that's a whole different podcast. I'm so anti-forced present giving.
Yeah.
I'm like,
yeah. If I think that you're gonna love this gift, no matter what day it is, I'm getting it for you.
Thank you. Because I'm like, no. We do adventures instead of gifts. So my kids literally get nothing for Christmas.
Yeah, experiences.
Yeah, I'm like, no,
they're going to thank you for this if they haven't already. Like one day
they do.
They're gonna look, exactly.
It's cool to see it now. They're like, well, where are we going to go this year? And I was like, wait, what? They're like, our adventure. And I was like, oh, sweet. You guys are digging this. Okay, I see it now. But because I did question that. I'm like, am I robbing them of like Santa Claus? And I'm like, no, I'm not.
Because one day all that stuff is going to be in a closet somewhere. Yeah.
In the garbage. Yeah. So, yeah, it's fun.
That's amazing. It's to have that support and to have them at such a young age to like realize how old are they? You have
they're 10, 9, and 6.
Okay, yeah.
And they're ticking up this summer. So 11, 10, and 7. Wow. That sounds so much older.
Wow.
I'm like, oh.
Yeah, time's flying.
Yeah. So there's I give them a lot of very early on after the divorce. I haven't hidden from them that it's hard.
Yeah.
And they've seen me cry. They've seen me, I can't do this on my own. I need your guys' help. They've seen, I know a lot of people think that it's so imperative that you stay strong for your kids, but I'm like, who said crying was weak? Mm-hmm. And so I think that they've been able to see us come together as a collective tribe. I call us the tribe. Yeah. So we come together and we don't do chores. We do like contributions. Everybody contributes. Yeah. We all live there and they lean in, and in return, everybody leans in. Everybody supports one another. And it's not like this, we're equals,
For sure.
I'm still the mom,
yeah.
They
have say.
They are probably scared to death of me, but they also understand that they have a lot of freedom in choice, and they have a lot of support, as long as they're just like kind to people. Yeah. They know that they would absolutely break my heart if they were mean to somebody or didn't stand up for somebody. There's just that's heartbreaking. I think that would realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. I saw some pictures of them that you take them flying, right? So like,
I do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do they want to follow in the footsteps?
I don't know. I think they're my oldest daughter, she's taken a couple of glider lessons. So
Okay.
that's when you get towed behind a tow plane and then you get released and then you fly in a glider.
Wow.
And
Wait, then do you have to land yourself then? Or?
you do.
Oh,
So she can solo at age 14.
That's amazing.
Before she can even drive, right?
That's-
It's kind of crazy that she could be in the sky. Oh my God.
Wow.
But yeah, she's really artistic and really into like engineering
Yeah.
and stuff too. She's just really, all of them are super smart.
Yeah, well, and
So-
you're probably not pushy.
No, if they want to go
You're
try
like,
something,
Exactly.
I'm like,
You'll
go
be
for
support-
it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
I want them to try it and know their ability of, hey, I feel comfortable trying it. And my oldest wanted to do, she's itty bitty. She's like this big, you know, and like, she's like, yeah, I want to try out football. I'm like, Ariel, it's tackle football. She was one of 3 girls, because it was co-ed, one of 3 girls that signed up for this league.
Yeah.
But she didn't sign up initially. I didn't realize it was co-ed till we showed up at the practice, and her brother's out there practicing, and you could just see the turmoil. She's like, I really want to go down there. I'm like, well, go down there and go try out. And she's like, you could just see it. She's like the fear just like kept her pulled down in her seat. She goes, can you go with me? And I'm like, no. So I know, it's so mean. I'm like, no, I can't. So she kind of looks at me, and all the coaches are like these big burly dudes that played football, you know. And I'm like, no, you need to go down there. Can you walk? No, Ariel, I can't go down there. I said, Ariel, you want to do art when you're older? You want to be a professional artist? And I was like, I can't be there to defend you. I said, you're going to have to do scary stuff on your own. I said, if you want to go try this,
Right.
go try it. If you don't like it at the end of trying out, guess what? You don't need to do it. So she goes all the way down off the bleachers, makes it all the way to the gate, comes back because she's still too afraid. Same thing. Can you go with me? And I'm like, no. So she does it, and her team ended up winning championship.
What?
I know, right?
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
I'm like, yeah, she didn't play again, but she had fun. But it was the idea of, what's the harm in trying? Just
Right,
try.
right.
See if you like it. If you don't like it, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like, whatever. I actually am supportive. I know that sounds very like
No, you
calloused.
are.
I'm
It's-
like,
it's a hard lesson.
I'm like, no, I can't go with you. And I guess maybe it's the realization that, you know, I lost my dad when I was 12 too. Like, I'm not going to be around forever.
You're right.
You
Yeah.
know, and I mean, I hope that I go before they do, but it's, you know, what can I teach them today?
Right.
You know, what tools, and I want her to be able to think, all of them to be able to think and
Right.
trust their thought process too.
Yeah.
So,
We can cut this next part out.
okay.
I want to pick your brain on that like doctor that was dragged off the plane.
Oh yeah.
What's up? Like what happened with that? It was crowd too, like they overbooked it, or what happened?
No, what they really didn't go into detail about was, it wasn't the fact that it was overbooked, but what got him into trouble, and I wish that the airline wouldn't have. The airline was they were too forward in apologizing for the incident, because it was the police that handled the situation. It wasn't the airline. It was the police that were there. The police were the ones that took the individual off the plane. But when you get off the airplane, when you leave, you're not allowed back on, and that's against the it's more of a federal regulation. So he had left the plane after.
That was
what's
left
not
out.
shown. Yeah, and so when he came back, then there was an issue, and I guess he even ran down the jet bridge too. So it was like running down the jet bridge, and so I don't know the details. I don't know, and I don't know what it was with the booking, because it was something involved with. A lot of times when they're trying to reposition crews, it's called deadheading, which is an odd name. So I'm like, whatever. So you have a positive space ticket on the flight, and I don't know the specifics if he got one of their seats or it was given. I don't know. But for whatever reason, he was asked to go off the plane, but it was the coming back on the plane, which then had the police involved, because then it became another issue, because then you're not allowed back on.
Yeah.
And the only type of leeway that they'd probably give is if it was like you ask permission to like, hey, I need to go and get this and then come back. But if you're off the flight, you're not allowed back on.
Yeah, that's an unspoken rule. I think many passengers don't.
Yeah, a lot of people were like, oh, I left my cell phone or my iPad in the back of the seat, and watch how quickly the flight crew will say, you need to stay off the plane.
Okay.
And you could even do it less. You could probably test them even, and they won't let you back on.
Okay.
They're like, you need to wait over there on the jet bridge. I will go back and find it for you.
Now, what's the risk in letting them back on?
It's a security issue. So, and that's their own.
Yeah.
I don't know the reason.
Just like
I just know that that's the rule.
Yeah.
Maybe it's more of considered suspicious activity then.
Sure,
if you want to get back on the plane, that maybe somebody, I don't know.
Yeah.
So
it's not like they left like the airport and came back.
Yeah.
So it's not like they could have gotten something that they could have left on the. I don't know.
Yeah.
It is what
I don't
it is.
know.
Maybe it's an old rule.
I know. I'm not sure.
Okay. Well, you shared an awesome experience of like you had the call or the say to hold the plane.
Yeah.
Right. Were there any incidents like while you were flying? Like, did anyone deliver a baby or like anyone?
Oh,
things like that, you know? Like,
no, you know what's so terrible? So in my mind, I'm like, what I was told, and I don't know if this is like just it's false information, was that if you have a baby on a flight, that kid gets free flight benefits. I'm not saying moms go travel, but I'm just
right, like when you're about to deliver.
But that's what I heard, and I was like, I always joked around about that. I know that's terrible. So no, I have not had any women deliver kids on the plane. I know that there's many. Right? Why are you saying this, Marissa? I think it was back in the day. It was so rare, but yeah, and I think there was a baby born on JetBlue, and I think that they named the baby
Blue?
or something. I know, right? Or maybe they named maybe the airplane's name was Baby Blue or something. It was so cute, like, and it was whatever.
Aww.
But that kid should get flight benefits. I'm like, that kid should. I'm sorry, fiasco. Then I'm like, huh. Or especially the mom. Like,
right, going through all that. Screw the mom.
I know, right? I'm like, geez. But yeah, no, I haven't had anything like that. There's been medical emergencies where some people they have an odd reaction to medication or
passing out.
Yeah. Sometimes they might have taken a medication because they fear flying and might have had a cocktail before they boarded the plane. Didn't exhibit any signs of being drunk.
Yeah.
And so there's been issues like that, or not necessarily on my flights. So, but we've had little things like that.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Have you ever felt like maybe not because you're so laid back, but like a great amount of pressure to perform while flying? And then if so, like how did you alleviate that?
I think initially there was this
just dance a little, shake out the nerves.
Yeah, it's more like a nerve thing, and sometimes it depends on the crew that you're flying with too, because some of them just are not really. I think when you're first transitioning, they're not really like a coach. They just want to show you what you did wrong, and you're like, I think it's a difference in technique. I don't think I would tell somebody what they're doing wrong. Just more like, hey, this is how you're already a pilot.
Yeah.
You know, you've already made it this far in your career. Hey, these are little tricks to help you figure out how to do it better.
Yeah, there's no one right way to do it.
Yeah, and so sometimes I think it's more of a teaching difference, and so it can be more of a personality clash too. I try to dismiss it usually.
Just take it for what it is, yeah.
Yeah, that sometimes it could be even a barrier if we're from different backgrounds, and it might come across just differently, more stoic, and that might be the way how they were just raised. And in reality, they genuinely want you to be, safer or learn it better,
right.
and
it is hard to imagine closed-minded people flying though if they're flying on a regular basis.
Oh, my Lord.
It's like you get to.
Some people say stuff, and I'm like, I have to sit here up front with you.
Like, I get it if you've never left your, area, but like you're going all over the places.
Yeah, we've had closed-minded passengers. One guy came on board, and he's like, I hope she knows what she's doing. And I'm like, oh. Oh, I hope so too. I just
It's my
keep
first
my
day.
eyes closed when I land, so I just hope for the best. So, but I'm like, I just can't imagine people saying that. I don't understand people that they don't have a filter.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't really think I would say that.
Right,
I'm like,
right,
are
right.
you? Is that against the company? Then you're doubting our training? Or is this?
Yeah.
Seem more sexist, but I'm like, oh, whatever. It's just you don't really pay attention to that. So.
Okay.
That's usually like the very 1% at tops. But
Yeah. Okay.
yeah.
What's next for you?
Yeah, really. I don't know. I've always wanted to like open like an air museum to teach like kids about flying.
That's awesome.
So
Back in where? Back SoCal, Louisville.
somewhere, somewhere. I'd like to. I don't know. I've always kind of had more of a romanticized like flying around the world in a Catalina or like an albatross seaplane.
Yeah.
And then just with my kids though too, and just being able to have us all crew together, and yeah, so something like that. I'm not really sure how that would come together.
Huh.
I think that'd make an excellent TV show.
That would.
Okay.
That would. Like if you could have a summer home and maybe back in SoCal or somewhere else and
Right.
just like fly.
Yeah.
Fly,
You know, they used to have seaplanes going to and from Catalina, even the island.
Okay. Now point me in the right direction. Where?
Just off like LAX, just
Oh.
not very far.
Okay.
Yeah. But no, I would love to be able to do that. There's just something. Just those are very physical planes. I mean, it takes a lot of
Yeah.
muscle to be able to use and stuff. But it's
Kind of like driving stick shift, like.
right.
Yeah.
But there's something that's like
It keeps you grounded even
it
while you're up in the
does.
air.
Dude, it's like I know, right? And you work for it. You're definitely you're
visceral.
Yeah, it is, and it's you're very much a part of the plane then because you physically had to move it that much. You're like, dude, but yeah, there's a lot of beauty in airline travel, but there's also I could see
So how much of you is in it if it's maybe automated or how? Yeah,
it's automated.
a lot of it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's I'm kind of like a systems manager.
Okay.
That might sound really bad, but you are. It's very tech savvy and fly by wire. We have auto throttles, so they'll go in advance on their own, which
wow.
that's new for me.
Okay.
But a lot of the times there's lag, so the airplane's like, oh, if there's like turbulence or something too, or if you're sometimes just technology, sometimes it's just lagging, so you have to override the system to make sure it's a smoother ride, or that you are not losing too much energy, or having too much energy too, because there's a lot of things aerodynamically that can happen. So as smart as the airplane is, I don't want to make it seem like that we're not flying. Most pilots will hand fly, so not use the autopilot. Easily up until 10,000 feet. Some people take it at least to 18,000 feet.
Okay.
Some people turn it on as quick as 1,000 feet. I know it kind of depends on the situation too. Like if you know that there's a lot of stuff going on too, and it's just like this crazy day, that might be something that the pilots would brief and say, hey, I'm going to ask for the autopilot on at 1,000 feet because we're going to have to be busy on it. Might be super busy airspace and stuff too.
I thought it was gonna be the other way around. So if it's busier, you're gonna put it on autopilot.
Yeah, or sometimes, it depends on what is asked too. For me, I came from an airplane that had we had autopilot. Minimum automation, and so I was like, I trust myself over putting it on the automation, and so I'm sure that'll be more of a middle that meets somewhere. But some people, even on a visual day, they'll leave the autopilot on until closer to landing. But it just depends. If it's gusty winds, especially, the autopilot is usually behind because it's delayed in the gust and then it's overcompensating or undercompensating. So for me, you do want to hand fly it because I'm going to be far more efficient than the plane.
Such a good thing. Yeah, robots can't take your job.
Yeah, I know, right? Job security. Thank you.
No, yeah, that's a thing.
I'll tell you what, though. Sometimes it's usually the most sketchiest wind day or like the bad like weather. Those are the best landings because you have to be on it the entire time versus like a visual day and it's like calm wind.
Right. Well,
you're like, oh, this is easy.
Passenger
and then all of a sudden you're like, boom. I'm like, really? I'm like, jeez. It's like, this Navy carrier landing. And I'm like, I'm sorry, welcome to Chicago, folks.
Yeah.
That was my first landing, not, and I'm like, oh God, no style points there. I know, right? Either that or they automatically
Do
assume.
a barrel roll.
Yeah, no, right. Either that or they assume if it's like a crappy landing. Sometimes they do assume. They're like, oh, is that hers? And I'm like, it's his or hers or whatever.
As they're walking out, just put a sign like.
So it's no, I did have one that was super funny. There was a corporate pilot. He flew Learjets, and he goes, "That was probably one of the best landings." And I'm like, "Did you hear that, El Capitan?" I was like, "That was mine," and he's laughing, and I'm just like, "Oh, okay, whatever."
That's awesome.
So, yeah, that was funny.
So with the automation, how much mentally are you up there?
Well, hopefully you're there. Hopefully you're not like spacing out, like playing on your phone, which you're not supposed to do anyways. But unfortunately, there are people that do that. You're there to monitor the systems and stuff. Once you're up at altitude, you're basically just monitoring the systems. You are talking to air traffic control, but you're flying.
How often?
It depends on how busy, but you might get a call every 5 minutes or something like that.
That's
because
pretty
you're you're transiting through airspace though too. So there's sectors, and so once you fly a certain way, they'll give you the handoff to the next.
Oh, okay.
And if it's really busy, they might have to keep you in your climb, or have you stopped your climb, or have a heading change.
Yeah.
So there's lots of things. Or if there's weather, they might, you might deviate, to either side, or turbulence. That's not ATC's job to provide a smooth ride. A lot of people, even pilots, when they get on board, they're like, it's my pet peeve. They'll get up on there and they're like, it's choppy. And I'm like, yeah, you're flying, dude. It's just, you're in the atmosphere. You're going to get bumped somewhere. And they're like complaining. You'll have pilots, and it's not air traffic control's job to give your butt a smooth ride. It's their job to keep you safe from other aircraft. They're not meteorologists. The radars that they have are mediocre, and a lot of pilots. I shouldn't say a lot. There are some pilots that tend to sound very whiny and needy on the radio because they're complaining they have a bad ride, and it's like, guys. I say guys, not necessarily talking about men. I'm sorry, I need to clarify that. But it seems very, I don't know. They're not there to provide a good ride for them. Okay. So we just sometimes pilots lose.
Just take some account. Just
hey, it's life.
Yeah, it is.
This is a part of flying. Yeah. It's not going to be smooth. It's summertime, or yes, it's choppy. Yeah. But a lot of times they will ask for a different altitude, and they'll get ride reports. Okay. We call them ride reports, and so sometimes it's better at higher altitudes, and other times it's better at lower altitudes. Okay. Yeah.
For those that are maybe thinking about flying, maybe let's say they're in high school or college, what's the outlook for pilots? So it's looking pretty positive.
Awesome.
For we talked about diversity a little earlier.
Yeah, yeah. Right now, there's women make up 6 or 7% of pilots.
So low. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and then on top of that, then you start getting into different ethnicities too, and it's really the numbers are changing, rapidly, which is great. It creates a better work environment. It's awesome. I feel like we work better. There's more unity, there's more, it's nice. So it's really neat to see that change. Okay. And that was one of the reasons why I didn't want to go to the airlines. I just thought it was just a bunch of white males. Yeah, I was just like, this is not, don't want to be around just a bunch of people that are complaining. Sorry, I just totally typecasted.
That happened to be white males.
But I'm just like, okay, I can't do this. I can't be stuck in the plane with you. But, no, it's nice to have people from totally different backgrounds. There's some people now that are on their second and third career making major changes. One of my friends is a retired firefighter and a retired police officer. This is his third career.
That's amazing.
Is now an airline pilot. And I'm like, that's pretty darn cool. Yeah. And as far as well, not just for the young kids, but like even people considering a career change. I mean, I know there were lots of people in my class that were even, I shouldn't say lots. There were a couple people in my class that were 50.
Yeah. Wow, okay.
And it's like, you can make your mandatory time to retire is 65.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you could even be an airline pilot at 60 and fly for 5 years, and they'll hire you. They'll
Really?
totally hire you. Yep, there's a pilot shortage, and if you've got the flying ability and the knowledge, you are in. And
that's cool.
it is. There's a lot of opportunity that did not exist otherwise, and so in ways I'm glad we're at a shortage. But yeah, there's a lot. This is a great time to get involved in aviation, not just as a pilot, but as just any of them: air traffic control, dispatch.
Yeah.
Gate agents, flight attendants,
right.
I mean, things are changing. They're still kind of slow in movement with the pay scale. And, but it's, if you really love what you do, you're not really working. You're not really.
I totally get that. And we both agree, there's gotta be a minimum, right? And we can be frugal, but in other areas of our life, there is a minimum. But yeah, I agree. If you love what you do, I mean, you'll somewhat overlook the money aspect.
Yeah. I mean, you need enough to survive, but there's still just,
I get it. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Did you have, that's all I had, Marissa. That was amazing.
Thanks.
I love that. That was super fulfilling for me.
Cool. It was fun.
Yeah.
So thank you for having me. So
it sounds like you're a badass mom, a badass pilot. What has social media done for you? Have you had people I want her as my pilot?
I've had a lot of people, even grown adults, are like, "Can you adopt me?" And I'm like, I'm just like this mom. They're like, "Okay." I've had a lot of single parents reach out, and a lot more of even just the sharing the story of my marriage and stuff too with people. I've had a lot of moms reach out, and dads and those types of situations. But there's it's just created a community I think that would not otherwise exist without social media. So I think sometimes it could be used for the good and sometimes it could be used for the bad. But I think it's been a very good positive thing.
Right.
So
where can people find you if they had more questions? She has an awesome account, guys.
So it's Barefoot Flying Mom. So barefoot_flying_mom.
Okay.
And I'm there. I also blog for Yes Louisville. It's a positive content company. So it's just our little shenanigans for the kids and I.
Oh, it's your blog.
It's not my. Well, I'm a
contributor.
Contributor on their blog.
Okay.
So yeah,
sounds good.
Fun.
Thank you so much again, Marissa.
Thank you.
For those paying attention, continue to stay curious and habla aloha. On to the next episode.